good about it.
All right, I think most people are back. We're here at RSCA, Higher Fire Management, and I'm going to turn off and we'll bring up the GitHub tracker and get going. Elliot, you want to bring that up? Yep. So we are starting at issue 40. Sometime. There we go. How to select the selection committee. Be good to make that a little, yeah, I don't know. I'll get my own window bigger and see if that's hard to read. Okay. So there was the who creates the committee that selects RSCA. Do we have text on this? Oh, yeah. Is there text? I don't remember text. Is there text? Okay.
Well,
Jay,
we basically say it's up to the LLC. Sorry to skip the line here, but I think we have text on this.
Right. I mean, they have to hire. It ultimately has to be up to them. But is there discussion on this? Is it people? What is it that people would want other than just leaving it up to the LLC to do it? I don't know if you have anything to add here, Jay.
Text. The current text is fine for me.
Okay, Joel, you are in the queue.
Thank you. The main thing was that there was various discussions of various ideas as to who the LLC should be mandated to have in the loop in order to try to make sure that the right things happened. And I was one of the people who thought that was a good idea, which is why I've gotten on here now, because the more I've thought about it and the more I listen to the discussions, I think it doesn't work. And so we'll have to go with keeping it general.
Okay. I think the comment came from Mirya. Are you around? You want to contribute anything here?
Sorry, I have a vague memory that we did change this already or not, or that we did discuss that already at least.
Well, we currently have, it's just the executive director and they take into account the role definition. So like,
I thought we had a revised text somewhere that said that didn't actually talk about having a committee, that like just said that the director is responsible for finding a way for making the selection where a committee might be one option. But sorry, yeah.
do you think that that's important? Do you think that this text is harmful?
So that was the basis of my comment here, or my issue here, was that I'm not sure if we need that level of detail. I don't think it's super harmful, but like if we just take it out, I'm fine as well.
Anyone else want to contribute? Martin?
Probably sort of try to split the difference between what Miri is suggesting and otherwise, and simply say that the LLC is responsible for making any hiring or contracting decision, and leave it at that. Obviously, that probably falls to the executive director, but there's no need to specify that so directly.
Jay, any problem with that? Lucy, I see you in queue.
Sorry, no problem for me. I mean, I like the statement about forming a search committee because it links that to the community. It ensures that there is community involvement in the hiring process. But if it's not there, I'm not going to object to it. That's fine.
Lucy?
I had a question for Jay, which is there currently language in your contract about the process that you use when you're contracting for other roles? Would that cover this? Is community consultation part of that?
There isn't anything in there about that I'm aware of, and I don't think there is in any of the RFCs either that govern the IETF LLC.
So the LLC delegates to you and you determine a process?
The board may give me stronger instructions, but generally that's the case, yes.
Okay. Martin, I would probably support your proposal then.
Anyone else? Peter?
Purposes, could somebody restate what the proposal that everybody's agreeing to is?
The LLC decides. Nothing else. Yeah, the LLC selects the RSCA. That's it.
Yeah, this is Peter. Not with my editor hat on, I like having something about a search committee or a selection committee or whatever we call it. I think otherwise there could be concern that, you know, the LLC executive director is going to shoulder tap someone and, you know, not have a open process or that kind of thing. So I think specifying that we have a search committee is a good idea.
Mike? No audio yet, Mike.
Sorry. One of the things that should go in here possibly is the possibility of hiring a search firm specifically for this job in conjunction with the search committee. It's still up to the LLC, but one of the things that triggered all of this was the RSOC saying, well, we only got one person applying for the job the last time around. So I don't know. Does that make sense?
I don't think we want to say that in the document. I think that's, again, up to the LLC to decide. That's me. Miria?
Yeah, just writing down that we have a committee doesn't guarantee that we have any kind of open process or community involvement or whatever. If you want that, you should spell it out. If you want to say the process about searching should be open, then we should write that down.
So it seems like there's mild sentiment for leaving the search committee in the text. Maybe I might suggest rewording it so that the LLC is in charge, but there is a search committee. It may delegate to ED, but it ultimately hires.
So the point that Miria was making, I understand. So the word search committee is a little bit problematic here.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm suggesting is that what is useful to me is that it is a group of community people that meet and choose the RSEA. That's what's useful. Yes, I would use a search firm to do that with, you know, not going to attempt to do that myself. That's silly. And the in the way that it happens so far is that for a role of that level, the LLC board is the final sign-off. So I go and say, right, this is the candidate that I have, chosen through this process or has been chosen through this process. Do you sign off at that stage? Okay. Now we can put that in, or we can do as Martin says and just say that the LLC will just follow its standard process for recruitment, and put something in ensuring community engagement and involvement in the process.
Okay. Maybe we should fall back on what we've done all the way so far, which is charge you and Peter with constructing the text that does that. I think that everybody is going in that direction.
Do that, Brian.
The text is super fine now. Just replace committee with community here.
No, that doesn't work, because otherwise the RSCA is selected by the community.
The LSC takes information into account that the community deems necessary or helpful.
Right. It's an advisory. It doesn't. It is ultimately the LLC has to decide that they like this. They're paying for it. So the committee advises.
Jay, is this something you can live with? Others?
We wanted to have a committee in there expressly, I think.
Yeah, I thought we wanted to have a committee. Mirya, we're not trying to create an open committee that everybody in the community gets to give input on every candidate and review candidates and put together the list of, no, that's a disaster. But we do want it helps Jay to be, and the LLC, for this to be told, we expect you to delegate this to a committee, a set of people to do a bunch of the initial work that come from the community as representatives. We can't have the whole committee doing this, God. No.
It was not what I was asking for, but if you actually want to specify here that you want a search committee, then I think you have to say something about who is supposed to be on that committee, because you can always have a search committee and just put like the best 3 friends on it and it would not be open at all, right? So that's not what you want to achieve, I think. What you want to achieve is some openness. And if you want to go into more level of detail about making clear that there has to be a committee, then you also have to provide more information about how this committee is selected.
Yeah, this is Peter. I think what I heard from what Jay was saying was to address that concern, Mirya, is to say it's a search committee formed from amongst the community, members of the community. That way that we have that community engagement, as Jay put it, and that seems to address the concern, and that I can craft some text along those lines.
It's not only members of the community, because my 3 best friends are also part of the community, right? It has to be somehow an open process to find these people.
Mike,
yeah,
did you
noted.
say something else?
The trade-off is between confidence and openness. I would be going for confidence. I'd actually be looking for specific people with experience in this space to be on the search committee. And again, like I said, it may make more sense to go with the professional executive search type of thing than it is to try and do this as a volunteer effort.
Yeah, I think
I get really nervous about trying to make everything in this IETF a completely community gets to touch everything. It's starting to scare me again.
Jay. You're muted, Jay. Nope. There we go.
The committee that I am specifically interested in is the committee that assesses candidates brought from the firm together with the IETF executive director, and which produces the recommended candidate at the end of it, using a search firm to do that with, so that the decision about who that person is not solely an LLC decision, given that there are so many community views on what this type of person should be, that can, some of which I'm sure can be captured within the role definition, but many of which are, you know, more visceral than that. And so that's why I'm suggesting that as the way forward in that type of committee.
Yeah. All right.
Clear, right? What you're suggesting, Jay, is that there now should be a text around a committee in here, or that is representative of the community, or I mean, I guess at one point I think I heard you say you don't want the term committee or the term search committee there, but you do want some committee. Can you be just a little more explicit for me?
Sorry, my preference is for it to talk about committee, but if it doesn't, I'm happy for it just to talk about, you know, involving the community. And if it, I don't actually have I don't really mind what the text is. I just want to make sure that we have a conceptual understanding about what the actual process will be. We can scale the text for how much detail we want to put that in. So that either we put that at a principled level, or we put that at a you know, a very detailed level. But currently, I think we have an in principle disagreement here about whether the community is actually selecting somebody, or whether the community is simply being involved in specifying what the requirements are and bringing in the candidates.
And you're voting for the former, not the latter.
No, the latter, not the former.
Yes, I am voting for the former, that the community, together with the LLC, chooses the candidate.
Okay.
It's a selection committee. It's a selection committee, not a search committee.
Yes,
It's not
that's
generating candidates, it's evaluating candidates.
Yes, that's right.
Lucy?
There is probably a standard format for this in the way that the IAB requests volunteers for things like liaison positions. If the LLC did a process where they requested volunteers for a committee across the broad spectrum of communities interested in the RFC series, and then made a selection of a committee, that committee could then support Jay. And I like having it come through the LLC, since they're NOMCOM appointed and answerable to the community.
All right, Martin?
Rapidly closing on something here. This is good. I've put in some text above. I noticed that Elliot's typing furiously there. I've made a recommendation there. And I changed that just now to selection committee rather than search committee. I think Jay's feedback is good there. It will use members from the community, be responsible for making a recommendation to the LLC for the RFCA, and they'll take into account all the role definitions and information from the community, and the LLC is responsible for contracting. I think that captures all the points that we've said thus far without being overly prescriptive. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah. Miriam?
Thank you, Jay, for summarizing this problem, because I think I'm actually in the second bucket here, where I think the requirements from the community should be super clear, but then the details on how these requirements are actually implemented is less important. So I don't think it needs to be the community who actually is involved in the selection, as long as the requirements from the community are very clear. If the LSC, who would be responsible for selection, then decides they want to have some additional community members to get more input for their finance decision, you know, that's an implementation detail, and they can always do that. But it also seems to be a little bit of overhead to me to actually have a appointment process to form a committee to then appoint somebody, basically.
Lucy, you're still on. Do you want to say something else? No. So I think we're heading in a uniform direction. Lucy did confuse me a little bit. I don't think, Lucy, that you really wanted to have a committee find participants, a search committee. That I don't think you were arguing for that.
We previously used the term search committee, and
right,
that's what's in the draft right now, I believe. But I think Jay's point is well taken.
Yes. All right. So at this point, you have text that Elliot has in that window. You have text in the chat box. I think we should leave it to you and Jay to take all of that, construct something, and propose it as candidate text to include in the document.
I just want to note that I did hear what I think is two dissenting points of view on this text. Just so that we're clear, I think, Miria, you were just dissenting if I misunderstood, unless I misunderstood that this is sort of the bucket one version, and I think, Joel, you were also dissenting from this text unless I misunderstood, and I just want to give you two the opportunity to confirm or deny my understanding.
I can live with this text. I have no problem with it. I was dissenting from what I heard Miria asking for, which I may have misunderstood what she was asking for.
Okay, Miria, did I misunderstand you?
She's got a comment in the.
Yeah, I just posted in the chat that the text is fine for me. I would prefer less detailed, but what's written right now is fine for me.
Okay, all right, thank you all.
All right. We've done that. And our next issue is 47.
Yeah, I think Brian and Elliot and I were talking to try to put together the topics, and I think I saw this as one that impinged upon this whole topic of how do we select the RCA and so on. And so anyway, I think this is an important topic to address here in this context.
Okay. Mike started this. Do you want to add anything to your original issue?
Rereading this. I actually didn't realize this was going to come up today. I don't think I want to add anything at this point. I don't know where we go with text for it, though, to be honest.
Right. What do you think it ought to say? And specifically, do you think it really does tie into what the RSEA does? In other words, is this how we measure success of the RSEA or how we measure success of the whole process?
I'm actually looking at this as how we measure success of the whole process. We've got a lot of moving parts. We've got some tensions between the RSAB and the RSWG and who decides. We don't have anything in there for the failure of the RSWG. It goes off into Never Never Land. It would be. I think we've dealt with some of this by basically talking about the fact that they have to be paid for, and there's a process for doing that piece of the evaluation is being added into this process. So there's a monetary skeleton that we've just built here. I'm wondering if there are. I'm wondering if we know enough about where we want to be in 5 years, or maybe that should be the first document the RWG puts about, you know, the evolution and survival and improvement of the RFC series. So, does that help at all, or am I still off in the weeds?
Well, I for one, am struggling with figuring out what we would write in text.
Yeah, and well, like I said, we figured out what the skeleton is for what things. It basically provides some pushback against the RSWG, basically thinking they don't have a budget. There's a requirement there that things get paid for, and there's a way to make sure that happens, at least for the RPC. What do we do with respect to do we put in an evaluation process for what is the public perception of the RFC series now and 5 years from now? Do we provide do we make sure we spin up an independent body that every 5 years looks at what's been going on and says, or we spin this thing up and go, okay, let's everybody who isn't involved in this, does this look like it's working? You know, do we pick, we get a half dozen people who haven't been putting their fingers all over the process or haven't been involved in the thing, and we take a look at what their view is of the system from the meta point of view. Again, I don't know where to go with the text. It's just one of those things that it's a little bit like the whole pornography comment, you know. I'll know what success looks like when I see it. Unfortunately, I also know what failure looks like when I see it.
All right.
So
thanks, Martin. He leaves.
Engage with this particular. Sorry.
Yeah,
there's probably a couple of levels we could engage with this one. And I think there's probably some fairly basic statements we could make relatively early on. But I think what Mike's kind of looking for is an agreement on something like a mission statement or a set of principles by which the series as a whole can be judged, and the success of the series can be judged. And I don't think that we necessarily need to have that as part of a process document, which is the work that we're primarily doing here. But it may be one of the early deliverables, or maybe a continuing bone of contention. I don't know, but certainly I consider this within the scope of work for a working group, is to sit down and discuss what the principles are that drive their work and attempt to document those and capture those. Ideally, what would happen is that in a relatively short period of time, some very basic statements can be made about what things people agree on, a mission statement, if you will, and then more work can be done on an ongoing basis to work through some of the finer details of that sort of thing. There are some very pragmatic things you could say, like the RFCs need to keep flowing, but I don't think that's really particularly helpful at the level of being able to make decisions about whether something is good or not.
Okay, Peter.
I think this is an important topic, but I suggest we put a pin in it and not talk about it in this session, because we're kind of working through these issues about RSEA, contracting and all that kind of stuff. So I suggest we put in a pin in it for this meeting and come back to it in a future one and try to get some clarity around this.
Or maybe ask for contributed text.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all heading that way. All right, Lucy, you wanted to say something? Nope. Yes?
Peter just cut me. I did, but Peter just cut me off. So I actually think that this is a question about stewardship as opposed to funding. So I like Martin's idea of something like a mission statement. It would be nice if people thought about the role of this committee and stewardship for the series as opposed to the other bodies that are involved here.
And do you think that it ought, that text about that ought to be in the document we're constructing now? Are we going to demand that the RSWD do it?
I think if we were a working group, that would be part of the charter.
Okay, charter of the working group. Okay, that's a good point. All right, I think we'll take Peter's suggestion and move on to a different topic and come back to this one. And anybody who wants to contribute text, please contribute text. So where were we? That was 49, 47. We're going to 49. This is review.
This has to do with the RSEA performance evaluation.
Right. So, right. I mean, obviously, the LLC has a performance evaluation process that it would use for any contractor or employee, and we're not about to get in the middle of it, but we can add to it, right? We can advise them on things. Do people think that we ought to have text in our document that says that there's an explicit review opportunity for the community on the performance of the RSEA? Mike?
Yeah, this was in there when this was in there, assuming this was in there when we were talking about oversight from the RSAB or the RSWG on the RSEA. As long as the LLC has oversight on this position and the contracts are working their way back through there, I don't know that we have to be more. Yeah, we've got that section in there that really is somewhat problematic. And I think one of the things that Jay's going to need to do is actually throw it at the lawyers and take a look and see what works there. But I also want to make sure that during the Heather thing, I was told about a number of comments that went between the RSOC and individuals that weren't made available to Heather. I want to make sure that there's no surprises going forward with anybody we manage to hire for this role, or we're never ever going to get somebody in there again. So that's it.
Well, there is text here about performance evaluation. What would you change? I mean, we can ask you to review it and come back. Jay?
If Jay wants to go, that's fine. But I mean, this is not a bad set of things. All I'm saying is that regardless of what gets collected, it doesn't get thrown into the bucket of this is a personnel issue that's made available to Jay, but not made available to the actual person. So,
Jay?
So, to me, the current text is fine. I understand Mike's concern, but I don't think that's something we can document. And certainly, the proposed text in the issue tracker is way too detailed and way too constraining about that. I think that there are times when it is reasonable for somebody who gives feedback to expect anonymity around that feedback. For example, we already do that within the NomCom process, and that's well established. So I don't think we can exclude anonymity. It has to come down to good management of that, and I don't think we can define it better.
Is there anyone else who believes, who thinks that we need to provide additional text in this section? I mean, is Mike on the ragged edge? Mike?
Like I said, it ought not. If I believe that the IAD and the RSAB minus the RCA, it should basically get there and review the comments. If there is an issue that's affecting the public, there really ought to be public commentary. I mean, this is more along the lines of something like the public comment period for a radio station. This is an organization that is serving the public good here, and comments on a particular issue ought to basically be something you can say in public, rather than oh, you know, the RCA was mean to me. And making them public will actually sort of focus people in that space. Again, maybe you can't do that, but I've seen way too many back channels in this process already that I find somewhat offensive.
I am inclined to say, in the absence of a specific text proposal, we're gonna mark this as closed. I don't see anybody else worried about the issues. Everybody agrees confidential and sometimes anonymous feedback is important. I don't think we need to say that. So unless there's someone else here, and I mean, if you have a specific text proposal, by all means, go ahead and propose it, and we can consider that. But I'd like to close this issue otherwise. Is that all right? John?
Going into more detail, because I've already said some things in the chat, I just want it recorded that Mike is not alone in this concern. Perhaps I'm saying that's kiss of death.
Okay. Again, can you come up with specific text that would address the concern?
I'm happy to rewrite this section. I mean, it's got most of what I want in here. It's just the only piece that we're missing here is the fairness piece of it with respect to the interaction to the RSEA.
Okay. Well, we'll await we won't close the issue. We'll wait for some text. If we don't get it in a reasonable period of time, we'll close it. John, do you have anything else?
I'm more than happy to have a look at that text along with Mike, or if Mike wants to have a look at it.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else? All right. Next one is 55. So this specifically gets into the confidentiality stuff.
So if I can introduce it, Brian. So what I was looking for here, again, is some form of community engagement around that, the outcome of the performance evaluation process.
Right.
And so just looking, as I've put there that community feedback, while often of high quality, may be potentially biased or incomplete. And so just putting in some form of community check around that, and given that this is confidential, trying to find a mechanism, a group that this can go to confidentially who can be to do that. So that's what I was looking for here, and that's why I'm suggesting the RSAB and suggesting this process.
Okay. Let's first ask, do we agree with this? Is this reasonable? This notion reasonable? Anyone thinks that this is not a reasonable thing to do? Okay. Do you want to propose text for it?
Yep, sure.
Usual problem.
Yeah.
It's not clear that if the text is really that the RSAB will, let me just understand what we're saying. The RSAB is to be the review board for community feedback, for confidential community feedback, or for all community feedback. I'm just trying to understand what we're.
I think what's going on is you start by asking community for feedback. Then the LLC produces a document, which is what it believes is the performance evaluation of the RSEA, which is confidential, shares that with the RSAB and gets their feedback on that confidential overall performance evaluation that had community input. And then with that feedback from the RSAB, the LLC makes a decision on what to do. I get that right, Jay?
Yeah, that feedback is included in the final report that then goes to the LLC board.
Yes.
That's what I'm suggesting. So 2 is actually a draft performance evaluation, or a everything so far. The RSAB gets the chance to add, challenge, whatever, do those bits on that. And it says in my text, the RSAB, excluding the RSEA, does that.
John.
Maybe a clarification. It sounds like we're putting the RSAB in much the situation that the IEB serves on, the ISG serves on technical documents, which is that there's a last call, it's public, the document gets produced by the sponsoring AD. The IAB can take input directly from individuals in confidence with regard to the rest of the community, ISG rather. They input in confidence with regard to the rest of the community, and then feed that back and some decisions happen, with the only difference being the LLC makes the final decision. Is that a correct analogy?
Jay, sounds like it. It sounds like just what Elliot wrote.
Okay. I can't read what Elliot wrote without horrible contribution.
Step 1, community feedback. Step 2, LLC produces draft performance. Goes to the RSAB. RSAB provides feedback on that draft to the LLC, and the LLC makes a decision.
Okay, thank you very much.
Does the community feedback go to the LLC or the RSAB?
Miri, I didn't hear that.
Step 1 is community feedback, but who collects the community feedback, the LLC or the RSAB?
The draft currently says the LLC does.
Okay.
Actually, it says the ED does. Right? That's the current text.
And then this feedback is shared with the RSAB, or it's only the performance evaluation, which includes the feedback to some extent?
The latter.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right, we will construct text that reflects these 3 steps. and then see where we are with that text. Any other comments? That's where we're going. All right. So there was a question of whether item 25 is in this bucket of RSCA management. You want to look at that and decide? 25. We weren't sure if it did.
Yeah, that's
Go ahead.
about the SOW, which this is one of the older issues that doesn't have a clear explanation really. So I'm kind of curious. It seems like it might relate, but I defer to Elliot since he's the one who typed that one in.
Oh, look, I'm actually not muted. Okay. Yeah, there isn't a lot here. I basically copied this down. I think it was probably as part. I think this really came from Mike actually, but I did such a piss poor job of documenting it that unless Mike you'd like to elaborate on this, maybe we close, and if you want to open another issue, that's fine. Or Mike, why don't you take a shot, because I think that I was aiming this based on some feedback from you, but again, I didn't provide any context, so I didn't do a good job there. But if you'd like to comment now, maybe it's a good time.
This is just a simple question. This is just a simple question. When we hired John, the statement of work was written by the RSOC with public input, and ended up being about 80% of the text I provided by the time all was said and done. Prior to that, it was done by by various IAB members, and then I guess with the input of the lawyers, and then finally the IAOC at the time, but then had to be vetted by ISOC. So there's this new model. Does the LLC write it? And Jay is going, no, even though he can't see him. But putting it in and actually having a plan for writing the statement of work for the RACA is actually kind of important if we want to actually get this done in less than 5 years.
Jay, do you have an opinion on this? Go ahead if you wanted to say something.
The level of detail that we are going through in this process actually goes a long way towards understanding what that statement of work should be. If you'd asked me some weeks ago, I would have gone no. Now I'm okay. Yes, the LLC can do it and circulate it for consultation with the community, as Martin suggested.
For me.
All right, so we'll add that in, and I'm just gonna suggest I'll mark that as text needed, so that Peter, that's your hint that we have some sort of text here.
Yep. This is good. It was part, and we made some progress on it, but we need some text, so we'll hold it. All right, that actually is the completion of the RSCA management list. And we're on to the last item on the priority list of issues, which is defining success issue 47.
Yeah, we already put a pin in that one for today.
Yeah.
We did have, we do have one more thing that I just want to mention, which is I believe the chairs have discussed with Peter trying to the tempo by which the document would be updated, and I think we were talking about monthly, roughly speaking. I want to ask Peter first: are you okay with that? And second, is the group okay with that?
Yeah, with my document editor hat on, what I have seen working well so far for us is that we have an interim meeting, or we have a meeting like this. Text gets crafted, shared on the list. We have discussion, and then so maybe then a week or two before the next interim meeting, I publish a updated version of the document. This enables folks to have a more stable working document that they can review, see how everything hangs together. We can then close out issues, so that, and I have been putting these traceability in the document so we know which issues we're trying to close with each of these sections. And then that enables us to then identify what the important open issues are for the next meeting, and lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, I think that's about what I think works as well. Does anybody have any concerns with that approach? All right, just on one issue, Brian, are you okay if we just briefly dip into one last issue, which is there was the delegate discussion that we just finished, that we just had some commentary on list. We can probably knock this one off because I think we saw what I thought was emerging consensus.
Sure.
Are you
Go
okay?
ahead.
Okay. So I'll just introduce where I think things are, which is that the text that I saw fly by was that the appointing bodies or will set their own policies for how delegates are how they are represented in terms of appointing and withdrawing their delegates. I think I'm describing, roughly speaking, what was on list. And maybe if we can just tackle that last issue, do people have comments about such an approach? And I think Brian Carpenter and maybe one or two others got into that discussion. And Adrian, I think you commented it as well.
This is Peter. Yeah, I think where I saw that going, sorry, Brian, where I saw that going, take myself out of the queue, is that leave it up to those bodies to figure out how and who they delegate to. And that seemed to be where we ended up. And I'm happy to craft text along those lines, unless people have concerns, of course.
Mike.
Yeah, I think that's mostly fine. I think there will be a couple of things that won't be delegatable, and we may want to indicate that in the document. The one I was actually thinking about was the one we've just been discussing, which was the evaluation process. So
yeah, this is just for
our.
Oh, you mean for the RSAB itself?
For the for members of the RSAB, there will be some tasks we want the real members to be dealing with because we don't want to be spreading stuff around, for example.
Yeah, let me just see if we can be clear on what's being proposed, because I think what's being proposed is that, for instance, the IETF or the IESG representing the IETF, however they define their processes, or the IAB, for instance, could at any moment, based on their processes, withdraw the current representative and insert a new one, and do so as early and as often as their processes allow them to do. So yeah, I think that's what I took. That's what I took the discussion on the mailing list to be.
Right, and what I would really hate to have happen is have that happen halfway through the evaluation of a candidate for RSEA, for example. So I think there are some things that need to be transactionalized, so that whole transaction happens with one person, as opposed to going off into Never Land with possible lots of different people.
I guess, contrary view, that seems like over-engineering this. I think that the fundamental purpose of this is to represent the bodies that appointed them, and if those bodies want to swap them at more or less any time they can, and I think the usual social pressure will stop them from swapping them on a daily basis.
Joel?
Thank you. I think I'm going to agree with slightly different wording with Ecker. That is, I can't come up with any sensible way to constrain the bodies on who they appoint, when they reappoint. On the other hand, it would be really bad if they were churning the members of the RSAB and swapping them out at critical points and other such mistakes. But the answer to that isn't for us to write rules. It's for the community to say, you blew it in other ways. So I can live with keeping this general.
Yeah, okay. So, Mike, are you okay with that as well for the moment? And put it another way, let's allow this text until they do blow it, and if we have to add more process, we add more process later. Does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Very good. Excellent. Let me just mark that. So we have more text needed, but the text is pretty much right there. And Peter, I think you have enough to work with, right?
Yes.
All right. Good. Wow. Okay. Back to you, Brian. Can't hear you. Still can't hear you. You have muted yourself.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yes. So we're heading to the top of the hour. So I think that's a great place to stop. We've run through all of our major items. There will be a doodle for the next meeting, which we will provide a large number of options because it's end of the, it's summer vacation season, and we will see when we can get people together, and that'll range out the end of August, beginning of September. So look for the doodle poll to show up very soon. Anything else people want to talk about? AOB. Terrific.
I'll just add
go
one
ahead.
comment, Brian. I think actually we're making pretty good progress as a group. I'm really impressed with the collaboration of the group, and I just want to thank all the participants because I think we're moving at a pretty good velocity here. Yeah,
I would have said exactly that. The speed at which we're closing items and not opening up too many in the process is heartening and is definitely an improvement over what we were seeing not too long ago. And as always, thanks to Peter for taking on all this work. Appreciate it. Anything else?
Thanks to our note takers this time round. Let's see here. Who do we have doing note taking right now? I've lost track, but I know we had someone, and Martin earlier. And so thanks to both of you. And we will see you on the list. Jared. Thanks. Jared, thank you, Jared.
Thank you to everyone who corrected my typos and the stuff I put in wrong. I tried to go as fast as I could.
That's good. That's really good.
I really appreciate it. So thank you.
It's why Cody MD really works so well, is that everybody gets to do that. It's really great. All righty. See you next time. Bye. Bye-bye.
Oh, hey, Elliot.
Yes, sir.
Do you grab it from here and upload it, or do you need me to snapshot this and email it to you, or?
Do me a favor, just send me the link and I can manage from there.
All right, I will email it to you in a moment.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.